Oh, still muted. Hello, everybody. How we doing out there? Blair Nightingale here with TRADEway. I always start and I say, man, today is going to be awesome. What we're going to talk about is going to be awesome. But you guys know, I always say something like, yeah, but today actually is going to be really cool, something different. And today, I mean it probably more than I've ever meant it so far, because we do have a very special guest with us today. Dr. Jim Schultz is joining us on this webinar. If you guys know who this guy is, then I know you're excited. If you don't, then stick around because it's going to get cranked up in here. I am excited personally. Here at TRADEway, we've got some good friends over at tastytrade, tastyworks. It's something that we, as a community here at TRADEway, have really celebrated. We're going to talk more about this in a minute, but we've celebrated as something that has just really helped a lot of traders out there. We know that you guys out there are at multiple different skill levels. So wherever you are today, we've got something for you. But I've seen Jim on the platform for some time now. So this is going to be really cool to be able to dive in and ask some questions. Jim, are you with me on here right now? Can you hear me?
Man, I am with you. You got me?
Excellent. I
Awesome.
sure do. I sure do.
So Blair, thank you for the brief little intro there. And I have no doubt in my mind that you say that intro for every single one of your guests, because you guys have some amazing guests. And so I appreciate that. I'm really humbled by that. But come on, man, you know that you say that every single time you have somebody on.
Well, I say part of it, like I just mentioned, but I don't say it all because I've actually seen your stuff on there before. I know that you are a man of many parts. Obviously, trading is something that you're able to take people into a deep but accessible understanding. Also, a motivational speaker, fitness coach. You're into all kinds of stuff. And I like to tell our people all the time, trading, if you're going to trade, your system's like the car, the road is like the conditions, but who's in control? The driver. The driver is such a huge part of what happens. So everything we do in life somehow, some way can funnel into our trading. And so just seeing, again, the different things that you do, very, very important. So I say some of that. I don't say all of that every time. So welcome to the program, Jim. I appreciate you taking some time being on here with our students. We're going to go over some stuff here I think is going to be really exciting to hear your perspective specifically. Now, I mentioned, to dive right in, I mentioned tastytrade, tastyworks. Jim, why don't you tell us just a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what is this fun but quirky name, tastytrade, you got up on the wall behind you there?
Yeah. So again, thank you for the intro. And yeah, Blair, I'm involved in a couple different things. I have 3 small children, so I'm not busy enough. So I'm trying to find other things to do,
Of course.
obviously.
Yeah.
And so, of course, but so tastytrade. I'll get into tastytrade in just a second, but just a brief little something about me. I actually grew up in Detroit, and so I grew up on the east side of Detroit. For people that might be familiar with the Michigan area, I went to Central Michigan for undergrad and MBA, and then I went down to the University of Memphis for my PhD in finance. And I was actually one of the strange ones where throughout 9 or 10 years of education, I never wavered. Like, I knew literally from day one that I wanted to do finance, and I never changed my mind. I went straight through, and then a decade later, I was fortunate enough to leave the city of Memphis with 2 things: a doctoral degree in finance and the most wonderful woman in the world as my wife. And so I've been married to my wife, Autumn, now for almost 12 years, and we have 3 small children, and they're all amazing. But tastytrade, obviously, I'm sure many of your viewers are familiar with Tom Sosnoff, our leader, our visionary, right? Beret and all. We just accept him as he is.
Absolutely.
Just an unbelievable guy. And so, tastytrade, what we're trying to do is we're just trying to, very similar to TRADEway in a lot of ways, we're just trying to help people be able to take control of their own financial future. So to be able to be a better driver on the road, as you put it, I thought that was a really, really great analogy. And so I have been a part of, some of our programming and some of our shows, and like my flagship show, I guess you would call it, would be From Theory to Practice, which is on every day at 2 o'clock Eastern time from 2 to 2:30, and I've been doing that now for it's been about 5.5 years. And so I've been a part of some other shows, and I'm still a part of some other shows. I do some other things here and there, but every day that's kind of the main thing that I do. So that's a little bit about me and a little bit about Tasty Trade, and then obviously Tasty Works is kind of the brokerage side of what we're trying to do, where it's like, hey, you can consume all of our content for free. If you like what we're saying, that's great. If you don't like what we're saying, that's also okay. Just click off. There's plenty of other resources available to you. And then we just hope that some people might stick around and check out our technology, and then kind of help us out that way. So that's the 3-minute elevator pitch. A pretty long
That's
elevator
great.
ride, but it's not too bad.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I mean, there's a lot there. And for those of you who out there don't know, Jim just mentioned we can jump on that platform. I think you said every day, 2 o'clock Eastern time.
That's right.
Okay. So you can watch Jim even when this is done. You can go, you can watch Jim, you can spend some time with him. Certainly a lot to learn there. But you mentioned the Tasty Works platform as you were saying that. Hopefully some people will stick around, try that out. Something we're very familiar here at TRADEway. Again, we have a lot of different levels of interest and trading experience on this webinar. So for those of you who don't know, just very basically, if we're going to execute trades, if we're going to begin to learn this skill set of trading and using it to take control of our financial future, well, we need to have a broker. We need to have somebody who's going to execute those trades for us, somebody who's going to help us buy and sell what we want to buy and sell. So Tastyworks is a resource for us to do that. Now, it's one that we believe is an excellent resource, but I'd love to get your perspective, Jim, as you bring it up. What is it that you find unique about this platform? You clearly have a lot of experience in this, part of your expertise, of course. What is unique about this for folks out there that really is helpful to you as a trader and really helpful to them?
Yeah, that's a great question, Blair. And so thinking about Tastyworks and thinking about the platform and thinking about what maybe separates it and makes it unique, I think to summarize, we could go in a bunch of different directions with that question, but I think I'll kind of give everybody kind of one overarching theme. And then, if there are tributaries coming off of that source, then maybe we'll follow those down. But I think the main thing is the platform was built by actual traders. So it's not, it wasn't necessarily like spearheaded by developers, and it wasn't necessarily spearheaded by, people that are really good with like graphic design or layouts or whatever, right? We have all those people in place, don't get me wrong. But the idea, like where things belonged and kind of the user experience and kind of executing a trade and adjusting a trade and monitoring a trade, like all these different facets, they were built by actual traders. And so this is something that you can't really appreciate until you start trading. You can't really appreciate until you're actually in the thick of it and you're executing trades and you're monitoring positions because, as you know, Blair, as anybody knows, you open up a new platform inside of a broker, it's going to be super overwhelming. You're going to be like, wow, I don't know what any of this means. I've got numbers over here. I've got numbers over there. I don't know what any of this means. And so that, of course, is going to be the case for anyone brand new to the Tastyworks platform. There's just no way around that. But once you get inside, what you start to notice is everything is streamlined. Everything is streamlined in a way that won't make sense to you necessarily at first glance. But once you get involved, you're like, wow, that's super nice. Like, let me give you a concrete example of what I'm talking about.
All right. Yeah.
Tastyworks is, I've only had experience. I don't have experience with every platform that exists out there, but I've had experience with some of the major ones, like Interactive Brokers, like TD Ameritrade, Thinkorswim, that kind of stuff. Tastyworks, when you put your ticker up in the upper left-hand corner of kind of the main page, the positions page, right? When you load up a ticker in that upper left-hand corner, what's really cool about that is that ticker follows you across every other page inside the platform. It follows you to the monitor page. It follows you to the option menu. It follows you to the charts if you want to take a look at the charts. It follows you to the overview if you want to say, hey, does this company pay a dividend? Does this company have an earnings announcement coming up? All of that stuff. It follows you through that sequence. Now that may seem like a super obvious thing, but surprisingly, you actually won't find that on other platforms. Like, for example, TD Ameritrade. You have to go each page that you go into, you have to load up that ticker again. And it's just, so it's like little things like that that it's like they start to add up, and before you know it, you're like, man, this platform is just really well put together by somebody that obviously has done this before. So
Yeah.
I would say that's kind of the main thing when it comes to using Tastyworks that I really like about it.
Okay. So let me follow up with that, with this, because simplifying the platform in a way that clearly comes from experience, right? We've experienced it. Once you've used it for a bit, you've used some of the other platforms, what you just described. I think when you say that, I think of trading as a whole. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, both in terms of the tools we use as traders, but even just the approach we have as traders. You know, it's easy for it to become overcomplicated. Would you agree with that? Where we will take trading and add something else, and all the bells and whistles that can come along with a platform. I find that the Tastyworks platform, it has a lot of capability, but it keeps things pretty simple. And I'd be interested to hear, in your career as a trader, what are some lessons maybe that you would say to new people that are coming in, and there's this propensity in the industry to make things more complicated as we grow as traders, when really it's sort of the opposite can be true, that we want to keep things simple. What would your comments on that be?
That's a great question, Blair. And you kind of just opened up a Pandora's box. We may never come back from this. We may stay on this question for the next 40 minutes. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
hey,
yeah, yeah. Maybe
so
top two points
yeah,
here.
no, that was a really good question. So when I left the University of Memphis, I actually started my career as a college professor. And so I
Okay.
started my career as a college professor. I taught for 6.5 years. I taught undergraduate students. I taught MBA students, and I loved it. I really genuinely thought at the time that that was going to be my career for the next, 3, 4, 5 decades. But God had other plans for my life, and He fortunately brought me to Tasty Trade. But when I was in the classroom, one of the things that I noticed right away, and you kind of hinted at this, and this is so true, so many people in the whole world, but definitely in like an academic type of setting,
Sure.
they
Okay.
feel they feel some pressure to take things and make them more complicated than they need to be. And I don't necessarily know exactly why that might be. It could be a pride thing. It could be, a wanting to show off thing. It could be a lot of different things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But I
yeah.
feel like a lot of people feel like, man, I'm going to show you how smart I am by adding these bells and adding these whistles and adding all these layers to this to just show you how complicated this space really is. When I started teaching my students, one of the kind of pacts that I made with myself is I said, I'm not going to do that. I said, in fact, I'm going to go the other way with this completely.
Right.
I'm going to take these ideas that we go through, some really complicated things, and I'm going to boil them down to the simplest possible route, if possible. Now,
Right.
sometimes you can't avoid the complexity. You have
Yep.
to embrace it and you have to understand it. But there are many, many times when you can actually simplify things down and make them extremely simple. Now, let me tie that back into, trading in general.
Sure. Okay.
The short put strategy. The short put strategy. It is so simple. As many of your viewers, and I say we have a couple hundred people watching right now, as many of your students and your viewers and your audience knows that has experience with the short put strategy, the short put strategy is literally one of the simplest strategies that you could execute as an options trader. Well, let me tell you something. It is also one of the most effective strategies that you could use as an option trader. There are plenty of other ways that we can make it more complicated. We can get into ratio spreads. We can do front ratio spreads. We can do back ratio spreads. We can do unbalanced ratio spreads. We can do iron condors. We can do spreads. We can do all these different things. But the simple short put, man, it is just so effective. And I think people are sometimes surprised at how
Yes.
simple it is and how effective it is. And so I totally agree with you. And I think that, most traders who have been in the game for a while, they understand this. As you also kind of alluded to a couple of minutes ago, they know this to be true. And they're like, all right, listen, man, like I found something that works. I'm going to make this as simple as I possibly can. And so I think there's a ton of value in that. And so if your audience takes anything away from, this webinar or the last 10 minutes or the next 30 minutes or whatever, I would just take away that it doesn't have to be complicated to be effective. In fact, oftentimes when you overcomplicate things, you actually lose a lot of the effectiveness because you sometimes don't quite understand what you're doing. And then all of a sudden you reach a spot on the road where you're like, man, I've never been to this turn. I've never
Yeah.
been in these
Yeah.
conditions. What do I do? And that's a bad spot to be in.
Absolutely. Very interesting. And I wonder if it's true in this world of trading and finance more than maybe some others, where, the value of something that we learn or can do the effectiveness of something that we do as an approach to the market, it's easy to believe that it must be in its complexity when actually is something even more valuable when it's effective and yet so simple. So for you guys out there, that's what we want to do. We want to show you like there's so much you can do with this and it doesn't have to be so complicated. And maybe there's some voices out there that have spoken to you, whether it be the media or people or whatever, that have kind of made it more complicated. So I want to kind of lower the anxiety level for some of you guys and say, hey, this doesn't have to be so complicated, especially when you have quality people helping you understand how to do it like we do here at TRADEway over at Tasty Trade, Tasty Works. Excellent. Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, I want to zoom out a little bit for a second then, because you know, the number of brokerage accounts opened last year, I don't have hard data in front of me. I've read numbers as 2020 progressed. I mean, millions, tens of millions of new accounts, people getting into the market. We had GameStop, we had AMC. People out there know what I'm talking about. It seems like, and I'd love your opinion on this, you know, trading is just being thrust into visibility more than ever before. I know we got people on this webinar today. This isn't something you ever even thought you would check into, you know, but here you are nonetheless. What is unique about right now in trading, in your opinion, Jim? What's unique for people? And why do you feel like right now would be a great time to be learning this? Maybe if you're already doing it, we could go further. If you're not doing it at all, you could get started. But what's unique about right now?
Yeah, it's another, man, that's a really, I don't know how we recovered from that last question. We're definitely not going to recover from this one. There's no way. There's no way we're coming back from this one. No way. That's a great question. So I have two things that popped into my mind as I was kind of listening to your question and trying to think about what the best response might be. So the first one is this. I mean, this is a very unique time in the world. This is a very unique time in, you know, the world's history in terms of the coronavirus and in terms of all the different challenges that has brought about, you know, our country and even abroad. And it's just, I mean, this is a worldwide thing that we're all trying to, you know, deal with and mitigate and just handle and respond to and all that kind of stuff. Because of that, obviously, a lot of us are home a lot more and have been home a lot more. And so what's happened is I think people have recognized that, wow, I can actually pretty easily access my portfolio. And if I equip myself with, you know, a somewhat basic set of skills, I can actually manage my money effectively. And, you know, a lot of people might say you could do it more effectively than some professionals could do. And I am actually in that camp in terms of believing that. So the first thing is I feel like this doorway opened up to where, which you kind of alluded to in your question, where the last, you know, 18 to, you know, 20 months or so have really kind of made people aware that they're like, wow, there's this whole world of finance that, you know, what's fascinating about finance and what's fascinating about, you know, financial literacy. That's a buzzword that you hear a lot, right? Financial literacy. What's really fascinating about the whole idea of financial literacy is it doesn't matter what I want to do with my life. It doesn't matter what you want to do with your life. It doesn't matter what all the viewers and the audience that are watching today, what each individual person wants to do with his or her life. They could be a painter. They could be an architect. They could be a singer. They could be whatever. It doesn't matter. But there's one common thread that actually unites us all. We all want financial peace in the future. We all want some level of financial independence. Now, again, it's a relative thing that's going to be different for every single person. But we all want our assets to grow. We want our wealth to grow. We want to accumulate capital over time. Like every single person wants to do this, right? And so I find that to be very, very interesting in terms of you have this common thread that's united us all from the beginning. You know, I mean, we're going back to like the garden at this point, right? Like from the beginning, this is something that is inherently kind of inside of us. And then you have this opportunity where the doorway is opened, coronavirus, all those kinds of things. People are, you know, made aware that they can do it. Okay, that's kind of the first part of my answer. The second part of my answer is, okay, now you look at the stock market right now. I mean, today's a unique day because we're actually down a little bit, right? I mean, the world potentially got a whole lot crazier in the last, you know, 24 to 36 hours. So the market's kind of selling off a little bit, correcting, whatever. I mean, it's a minor blip on the radar screen. Last I checked before we started the webinar. But still, we're basically at all-time highs. We're basically at all-time highs. And so if you want to equip yourself with how to handle your portfolio, this is the best possible time to do it because, we have been long overdue, like years overdue for a correction, like years overdue for the market to kind of come back a little bit and just to breathe a little bit and not print all-time high after all-time high. Well, the reality is if you just buy the SPY or buy the QQQ and put it in your sock drawer, like, in honesty, you're probably going to be fine over the next 20, 30, 40 years. If history is any guide, you're probably going to be okay. But I would argue that you could put yourself in a much better position if you kind of put your hands on the steering wheel a little bit and take control of that, so that maybe if there is a correction, you don't just have to sit and grin and bear it. You can actually get in there and maybe adjust some things to kind of soften the blow a little bit.
Okay. So for some folks out there, wait a second now. Let me hit pause on that. You're telling me that when the market goes through any kind of cycle, right? We're posting all-time highs, like you mentioned. Maybe we hit a correction, maybe more. When those downturns come, it's a very prevalent thing when I talk to students and folks out there. The prevalent doctrine, if you will, is you ride those things out. You just let it roll, okay? Now, you're suggesting that with even some basic skills, we could begin to have management that could potentially do better than just riding out those highs and lows. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not suggesting that you have to get short the market or anything like that.
Sure.
I'm just, you can use some pretty basic option strategies to just soften the volatility of your portfolio, to just soften the fluctuations. That's exactly right.
I think that's important for folks to hear. Again, we've got people of different skill and experience levels. And just to know you've got, again, some simple approaches to help me go, I know because I talked to you guys 2000, 2008, even last year. I got phone calls last year. Hey, 40%, it's gone, right? You guys have been through that. Understanding how to do some of these things is also helping us navigate those seasons, and even in some cases turn those into positive seasons rather than something that's more of a storm we need to ride out. Okay, we made it through that one too, Jim. I think
I don't know how we're doing it, Blair. I really don't. It's only by God's grace that we're doing this. Let's be really clear about that.
So I've mentioned a couple of times. Even, we may have different skill levels on here. So now being a great time to learn to trade, now being a unique time to learn to trade, and I would say even an important time to learn to trade for a lot of people. So if we've got people on this webinar, some of you are watching by recording right now as well, I know, what if we don't really have a background in this? You mentioned the credentials. You've known you wanted to do this for a long time, great majority of your life, your educational background, your professional experience. What would you say to somebody who says, yeah, but Jim, I don't have that. I'm not even ballpark that. Now I'm interested. That's why I'm here. But what do I do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's so many different ways that we could go with that question. If somebody is watching today and they have no idea where to start, like they literally have no idea where to start. So I'm going to strip this thing right down. We're not even going to go to the brass tacks. Like you don't even have the brass tacks yet. Like you've got to go to Home Depot and get the brass tacks. Like we're at a spot where you have literally nothing. If you're in that position, then what you need to do is you need to take some time to educate yourself, via TRADEway, via tastytrade, whatever the case may be. You have two amazing resources, obviously, staring you in the face today. You need to educate yourself on basic stock market awareness, basic stock market mechanics. Like earlier today, just a few minutes ago, I said SPY and QQQ. Right. Like somebody who's brand new, they don't even know what that means. They don't even understand what those letters mean. I would write them down and I would look them up. And I'll help get you started right now. The SPY is an S&P 500 index. It tracks the 500 largest companies in the United States. It is what is known as an ETF, an exchange traded fund that shows you kind of the value of those 500 companies in a weighted sense, right? And that's just like a super quick, broad overview of what the SPY is. And the QQQ is a similar thing, but it measures the NASDAQ index, which are technology-based stocks primarily. So like your Teslas and your Spotifys and things like that. So I would start with that. And then as you go, what I would do, as you're researching, I'll actually share with everyone exactly what I did when I was in undergrad and I was trying to learn this space. I would take notes, right? So I'm studying SPY, I'm studying QQQ, I'm taking notes. What I would do is, as you're taking notes, I would jot down all the questions that you have next to the notes that you are taking. And each question is going to lead you to an answer, and that answer is probably going to lead you to one or two more questions. And if you're committed to this, if you're intentional about this, then a week, a month, 3 months down the road, we all learn at different rates and different paces. At some point in the fairly near future, you're going to be like, wow, I think I kind of understand the broad market exposure. Okay. Once you get to that point, here's the second thing that I would do. Again, we're starting from nothing. We don't really know anything about anything.
Exactly.
I would start by buying some shares of SPY. I wouldn't try to get super fancy with options yet. I wouldn't try to get super fancy with trying to pick market direction. I would just, kind of bank my position on the whole idea that the market has risen 8, 9, 10% per year over the last 150 years or whatever it is. Just start there. Could this be the worst possible time to buy? Of course. Could we also go up another 25% from here? We could do that too.
Right.
And so nobody really knows, right? So start with that. Once you kind of have some skin in the game, some things are going to change with you emotionally. Some things are going to change with you in terms of how you process things like hope, things like fear, things like greed. These are important skills that you need to start to develop. The last thing that I would do, and I'll kick it back over to you, is the option strategy that I would start with. It actually is not a short put, even as simple as it is. The option strategy that I would start with would be a covered call. And the reason why I would start there is because as you learn about market awareness, as you get invested in SPY, once you get to the covered call step, you're going to realize quickly that it is a natural extension of having long shares in some stock like SPY. The jump, the leap that you need to make to a covered call, it's not as drastic of a leap as something like a short put, even with its simplicity, or other option strategies. So I would do market awareness, and then I would get in the game with some broad market exposure, like SPY would be a great option, and then I would research a covered call and try to get one of those guys on. I think that would be an amazing start for the next 3 to 6 months of somebody's beginning options career or trading career.
Amazing, and something anybody can do. I mean,
That's
anybody
exactly
can
right.
begin that process, and I think that's what people need to hear. I would just throw in, for those of you out there too, my story a little bit different, actually quite different in some ways. I had no clue that I was going to be doing this, right? This is where God led me. I was in the music industry. I was in missions and the ministry. And this is somewhere God brought me when I came to a place in my life where I realized, hey, I don't know anything about this stuff. I don't have a good grasp of this. There's a measure of security, right? There's a measure of growth that Jim talked about already that I want to have in my life too. And that brought me to TRADEway. And of course, 6.5 years later, it's completely transformed what I can do and how I see all of this stuff. So I want to encourage somebody out there today, wherever you're at, there is a journey that we can take you on here. And that is, as Jim said, two people staring you in the face. That's what we do. That's what we do every day. Advanced people, beginning people, we can help you move towards what you want to be doing and where you want to be. So that's great. I love that. Okay. So you mentioned options now a couple times, right? And I know options is such a big part of what we do. It's such a big part of what tastytrade focuses on. So without necessarily going in and explaining everything about what an option is right here, we won't necessarily go down that rabbit hole too far. But I know that you teach your class, you have your show, as you mentioned, every day. We're talking about options. There's a lot we can do with them. But just to start and step in the doorway a little bit, I'd love to hear from you, Jim. What is specifically attractive to you about options versus just buying stock? Now, I know that's a big question, right? But what's attractive about that? What makes options so useful, where we wouldn't just be doing stock all the time? You've mentioned a couple of those ways to apply that, but let's maybe dial back a little bit and get your thoughts on why options.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And that's a question that, if somebody did kind of start along the path of market awareness, and they ran into options, that's one of the questions that they should have. And so hopefully I'll be able to help people find the answer a little bit more expeditiously here today. Why would we even consider options over just buying and selling stock? Well, I'll give people a couple of things to think about. The first one is this. So let's say you do, research market awareness and you become familiar with, the stock market and the different indexes and, the SPY and QQQ and the Dow Jones and the Russell and gold and oil and bonds and just all these different things, right? If you buy stock in anything, it doesn't matter. SPY, Tesla, Priceline, Spotify, right? Alibaba, whatever. You need the stock price to go higher to make money. Right? It's very simple, right? I mean, the game becomes very simple at that point. If the price rises, you make money. If the price falls, you lose money. If the price goes nowhere, you don't make or lose any money. Right? Now I'm leaving dividends and things like that out of it, but just from a
Sure.
pure price action standpoint, it really is that simple. Okay. That's stock investing, right? That's the whole idea behind stock investing. Directionally, you have to be correct. Now, you don't necessarily have to be correct today or
Right.
this week or this quarter, but over time, depending on what time horizon you're trading, whether it be, again, quarters, years, months, days, minutes. I mean, people kind of splice it up, a number of different ways. I would strongly discourage people from looking at minutes, by the way. I don't know. I'm not exactly super familiar if you teach that to your students, but I think that might be a tough game to play minute by minute, but that's a separate thing. With options, when it comes to option contracts, the beautiful thing is this: you don't have to be directionally correct. Like, I don't have to be directionally correct to make money. There are other ways to make money with an option contract, with like time and volatility and these other kind of factors that go into impacting the option price. And so what's amazing about options, just like kind of painting with a broad brush here, is if I am correct directionally, I'm going to make money. If I am wrong directionally, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that I'm going to lose money. Let me say that again.
Yep.
If I'm correct directionally with options, I'm going to make money, just like stocks. But because of the way the contracts are structured with like strike prices and days to expiration and a lot of different, details that we could get into maybe, now or another time, because of the way that an option contract is structured, if I'm wrong directionally, it doesn't guarantee that I'm going to lose money. To say that another way, I can be wrong directionally with an option contract and still make money. And the reason why is because of these other factors that go into pricing options, like time and like volatility. So the reason why I would consider options, just as a painting with an even broader brush than I
Sure.
painted
Yeah.
with a
Yeah.
couple of minutes ago, you can diversify your risk and return profile in a way that you can't do with stocks because of the way because of the nature of the product. Because
Yep.
of the nature of the product, there are certain things with stocks that you cannot do. But because of the nature of the product, there are certain things with options that you can do quite easily. So you can start to, adjust your risk return profile to more closely fit what it is that you're going for as a trader or investor.
Yeah, there's a lot of flexibility there, and I know for a lot of folks that, again, as you mentioned earlier, Jim, just getting that familiarity. I know for a lot of folks, this might be the first time you've even really heard of an option. You don't necessarily understand what an option is yet. Some of you have been experienced. You trade options regularly, but for those that don't know, yeah, that provides a flexibility. And the main thing right now is that that is available to you. When I first started, Jim, I'd be interested to just even see your reaction. When I first started, I kind of thought like, man, Wall Street's kind of crazy. I just feel like they just make things up to do all kinds of different things. And there's history to it. Certainly there's math and things are very well thought out. But as a new person coming into the market, discovering that, wow, Wall Street has created these different instruments for me to do all kinds of stuff I didn't know I could do. And that is something that's so amazing to me about options. So I would say, even now, I earlier said, let's just dial it back a little. But if you could even just go in and give us a little bit of an idea out of your expertise, what is an option, and what are just maybe a couple of takeaways, not so much the flexibility you just mentioned. What are some of the key pieces of what is an option? really for folks out there, what is an option?
Yeah, exactly. So, again, like, yeah, we won't recover from this one. If we go too deep, like it's over. Like we're not coming back. And I mean this with all seriousness this time. But I will let's give a few details around an option.
Sure. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so when you look at the stock market, again, kind of going back to some of our examples earlier, like, SPY or Tesla, let's use Tesla because Tesla's kind of fun and, everybody has some opinion about Tesla. Not
Sure.
even necessarily the stock, but the company in the future and
Of
Elon Musk.
course.
And he's
It's
obviously
CEO, no doubt. Yeah.
that's right. He's a polarizing, personality in the marketplace today. So okay, so if I have some vested interest in Tesla, and to make things simple, let's just say that I think that I believe the price of Tesla is going to go higher. And so right now I think the price of Tesla is somewhere around $600 or $700 a share, at least as of a couple of days ago. So I could go into the marketplace and I could just buy shares of Tesla. I could buy shares of Tesla. I could toss them in my stock drawer and I could just, watch the market price. And if it goes higher, I make money. If it goes lower, I lose money. Okay. Well, underneath pretty much every publicly traded company, like some of like the smaller ones, like the less liquid ones, this may not be true, but all the companies that we've all heard of, like Tesla and Starbucks and Target and UPS and all these guys, right? You go in there and you can buy the stock, but underneath the stock, there's this whole world that's called the derivative world. And an option is a derivative contract because the value of the option is derived from the underlying stock price, alongside some other factors like time and volatility and interest rates and things of that nature. So what I could do is rather than going in and buying Tesla, I could go in and I could trade the option contracts on Tesla. Now, this is going to give me a lot more leverage and flexibility, specifically in the following ways. So let's say that I am looking at Tesla and I'm doing my research on Tesla. I'm doing, fundamental analysis. I'm doing technical analysis. I'm doing quantitative analysis or things of that nature. I'm looking at Tesla. Let's just say for the purpose of this example that the price of Tesla is $600. Again, that may be off from where it is right now, but I know it's around this level, more or less. Let's say I go in and I feel very strongly that the price of Tesla is going to rise to, $620 or $640 in the next couple of weeks or in the next couple of months. What I could do is I could go in and I could actually buy an option contract with that specific price target in mind. And I could do it for a fraction of what it would cost me to actually own the shares. And if I am correct directionally, which is no small feat, mind you, but if I am correct directionally, then I can be rewarded very handsomely with very, very minimal risk when it comes to the investment or the trade that I might make in that one specific, instance in Tesla. And so rather than buying Tesla and just, waiting on it to go higher, waiting on it to go lower, right? If I feel pretty convicted about, some direction to move in the marketplace, I can go in and I can use options to kind of magnify those returns in that stock while also mitigating my risk. Now, there's a whole nother way to use options, from the other side of the marketplace. And so again, the flexibility just cannot be overstated here, but that's one example of exactly how you could do that without getting too lost in the weeds
That's
with,
great. Yeah, I think that's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Just even making that distinction of we have something that's deriving its value from the stock, but it's separate from it in a sense, and that separate instrument that Jim's talking about, the option, has some pieces to it that maybe we don't understand today, right? We haven't gone into all of that. We do that in our programs. You can see that in our other information in our programs. But even though we don't understand all those different pieces, it's those pieces that create a lot of flexibility for you and I. It's those pieces that create the leverage Jim just talked about. So we may not understand what they are totally yet. It's a great preview on there's actually something else out there. It's a little bit different than the stock, tied directly to it in a way, but it helps us do some other things that I think are really, really important, which is why we want you guys to come on back, tune in, check out Dr. Jim's show, keep checking us out here at TRADEway. If you want to learn how to do this stuff, we can teach you how to do this stuff. So we made it out of that. We're making it out of all these. I'm not even going to believe that we're not getting out of the hole anymore because I think we got this thing on lock here. So, okay, moving on to just maybe the more practical side of your experience, Jim, as a trader. There's no substitute for having experience in the market. There's theory, but as your show clearly states, How do we take this theory, make it practical? So for you as an experienced trader, teaching traders, watching traders, being around some of the best traders in the world, what are some of your tips for people out there who are even watching, they're actively trading? What are some of your top 3 tips or top few, right, that you can pull in for us just to say, if you were starting out trading or you just started, what are some things that you would say, I would want beginning traders to know this? This would be something that you would want to give to our people today.
Yeah, that's some really good stuff, man. Really, really great questions today. One comment I do want to make on what you just said just a second ago, though. Everybody wants to be diversified, right? Everybody wants to be diversified. I mean, that's another buzzword that you always hear, like, I want to be diversified. I want to spread my risk, across different assets. And you absolutely should do that. You have equities, you have gold, you have oil, you have bonds, you have all these different asset classes. But one thing that is, again, unique about options is it gives you a gateway, it gives you a doorway into a level of diversification that you can't reach by just spreading it across different asset classes. So I kind of said that earlier, but I wanted to be really clear and really specific.
Yeah.
And that adding some level of options to your portfolio is going to diversify you in ways that you can't touch even by getting into other, asset classes, even by getting into like crypto and like Bitcoin. Like, it doesn't matter. There are just options world is so unique that the diversification is second to none. As far as tips for new people or even seasoned people, right? People that have been trading for a while.
Okay.
Here's a few things to think about. So you actually used a line. So this is kind of serendipitous today. This might be a bit of a divine appointment because you used a line that I use on my show almost every single day. In fact, I'll probably say it later today. You said that there is no substitute for actual experience.
Right.
And that nothing could be truer in terms of anything that we could possibly say here today. There is no YouTube video. There is no webinar.
Right.
There is no instructional set. It just doesn't matter. Like, you need these things to prepare you, of course. You need these things to equip you with basic skills so that you have some idea what you're trying to accomplish when you do get in the game. But you have to get in the game. You have to get in the game for you to really understand, what do I know? But more importantly, what do I not know?
Right.
And what did I not know that I don't know? I'm not trying to turn this into a dodgeball scene, but that really is true.
So true.
It's like, I won't know what I don't know until I'm actually faced with a decision that is completely new to me. And the only way to get in that situation is to be in the game, is to have the experience. And so a couple of tips that I would suggest for everybody out there. The first one is this. Ah, man, the world of options is vast, right? You are going to feel like you are drinking from a fire hose, basically from, the jump, basically from, shooting off the starting blocks. You're going to feel like, man, there's just so much to learn. And at some level, that can't be avoided. At some level, you kind of have to just embrace that. Don't run from that. Like, you have to embrace that. It is going to be, a complicated space for you, at least in the beginning. It is going to be drinking from a fire hose, at least in the beginning. But I would strongly encourage, and I tell my viewers this almost every single day on my show, we say this as well. I think you're much better off becoming a master at 2, 3, 4, 5 strategies that you understand all their nuances. You understand all the subtleties. You understand how to handle these guys in any market condition that might come your way. Now, of course, that's going to take some time. That's going to take some experience to get to that spot. But I think that's a much, much better pathway forward through the forest, as I like to say, rather than spreading yourself thin and feeling like you have to be, equipped with 35 different strategies. You can go that route too if you want to, but I really think you're gonna spread yourself too thin. That's the first thing that I would say. The second thing that I would say is, so you've mastered that one strategy. The second thing that I would say is, in all of my trading experience, in all of my investing experience, in all of my time in the markets, every single bad decision that I made, and there have been many, every single bad decision that I've made, they all share one common denominator. Do you think you might know what it is?
Are you asking me or are you asking?
I am. I'm curious. I'm curious if you can guess.
I'm going to say, for me, that answer is going to be emotional and it's going to be tied to fear. That's what I would say.
Okay. For me, it's very much in line with what you just said. But for me, The common denominator across every bad decision that I made was I was too large with my position size.
Sure. Okay.
The
Yeah.
position size got too large. And so, to speak to your point, the fear really kicked in, right? The fear, the emotions. I'm emotionally charged up. I'm not making good decisions. And the reason why that's the case is because the position size is too large. Now,
Yep.
when everybody starts out, like they're going to start out and they're going to have these feelings, like the emotions are going to be on high. And so you've got to kind of let those settle down a little bit. But once you get to a certain point in your trading, you're going to know what too large is. You're going to know what your position size should be. And I'm telling you, like seriously, like of the, dozens, hundreds, however many terrible decisions I've made in my investing career, that's, well over 10 years at this point. It all comes down to size. It all comes down to size. Now that doesn't mean that every time I've been small, it's been a winning trade. That's not what I mean by that at all. I just mean that when my position size has been in control and under control, I'm able to think objectively.
Yes.
I'm able to approach the position analytically. I can sleep at night. Right, I'm not glued to my phone or glued to my screen thinking, you're watching every single tick. Like we've all been there, right? I know you've been there. I've been there. Anybody out there that's traded, you've been there, right? You're watching literally every single tick. And so when your position size is too large, man, that's when bad things start to happen. So the main tip that I would have for people that are just starting out, especially, but even the seasoned traders, I'd be willing to bet that people right now on the webinar, let us know in the chat box. I'm very curious. Right? Can you relate to what I'm saying here? Can you relate to what Blair is saying here? Where it's fear driven, which I have found to be very, very highly correlated with position size. And so those are a couple of things that I would suggest people do. Master a couple strategies and keep your position size in check from the beginning. It's not a race. It's not a competition. Like you'll get there. You just got to give yourself time.
Wow. So good. So good. Goes back to what I was saying about the driver. I mean, what's going on in me if I've got to make these decisions, right? We all start out, even driving a car. I mean, it becomes second nature. It becomes something that we're so used to. You do certain things, you don't even really think about doing them. It just executed over time. You've done it many, 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 many times. But when you're in there in the first few months, year of driving, I can remember this, and I've watched this with young people doing it. And this is very similar. It really is, you guys, where there's a certain level of emotions, maybe a lack of clarity, right? And it does create behaviors that we just don't want to have in our trading. And I love that you nailed it down to one very specific thing. Position size has so much to do with our emotions and our mindset. Chasing that profit, looking for, I'm going to manage my risk more than I'm going to chase after that profit. And it kind of has that inverse effect. So yes, absolutely makes sense. We can see the comments here lighten up. Great advice. Totally true, says Karen. Daniel says patience is key. Patience is key. Agreed, says Thomas, right? Debit spreads tend to suck me into larger trade size, and I've taken some of my greater expenses off of that. Yes. Excellent stuff. Well, Jim, this has been a pleasure for me for sure. I feel like we've burned through this pretty fast now. We've been on 50 minutes. I actually can't believe it's been 50 minutes already. We climbed into some holes. We climbed out of some holes. We've helped expose people. This is just the beginning, guys. This is just the beginning. Any final takeaways for our TRADEway students and the Tastyworks folks out there? Where we're at in the markets today, where we're at in the world. Just any parting words, final words you would want to say to traders and what they can do from here.
Yeah. That's really, really great. And let me say before I forget, if anybody wants to reach out to me, my email is just J, my first initial, and then my last name Schultz. So SCHULTZ at tastytrade.com. So it's just J Schultz at tastytrade.com. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. Maybe somebody could drop that in the chat box, or maybe Ben could drop that in the chat box.
Yep,
that'd be really, really great. But the main thing that I want people to take away from today is there are many, many, many ways to be successful as a trader. And there are many, many ways to be successful with your portfolio and taking an active role in that portfolio, right? Remember, guys, this is not a competition, right? This is not who can generate the highest returns, right? Because one of the things I say on my show all the time is every gimme has a gotcha. And so don't get sucked in by all the gimmies and thinking and fooling yourself into, believing there isn't a gotcha sitting behind the curtain, because there certainly is. Right? Every gimme has a gotcha. And so if you want to chase super high returns, you're going to have to, embrace a pretty bumpy ride. You're going to have to embrace, some higher level of risk, some higher level of volatility. That's just the name of the game. But the point that I want to make, that I really want everybody to take away from this, is everybody has a different risk tolerance. Like, for example, I am extremely, extremely conservative, very conservative. And so people normally, when they think of options and they think of, derivatives, and they think of trading, they think of like Wall Street, the old movie with, Charlie Sheen. They think of like Wolf of Wall Street, like the newer movie. They think of like these shooters. They think of like these, these guys and these gals that are just like making moves and constantly this and that and blah, 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 blah. And, in my 20s, that's how I felt it had to be too. Right. But now, I just turned 40 a couple of months ago. And so now it's like, nah, man, it doesn't have to be that way at all. If that doesn't jive with your personality, if that doesn't jive with what you're looking to accomplish, if you're just thinking, man, I would really just like to kind of smooth out the ride a little bit, maybe take a little bit of risk off the table, and maybe diversify my profit stream a little bit, which I'm not saying you're going to outperform the market. I'm not saying you're going to have this huge alpha. I'm not saying all those things. You might. It's possible. Like, you're in the game. It's definitely a possibility. But if you can just smooth out the ride a little bit, that's a huge win, in my opinion. That's a huge win, in my opinion. If you can achieve the same level of return with less risk, that's a massive, massive victory. Now, some people are going to hear that, and they're going to say, that sounds amazing. Like, sign me up. How do I learn more? Okay, that's great. Other people are going to hear that, and they're going to say, no, Jim, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in a little better return. I'm interested in some outperformance. And that actually speaks to my point, right? That we're all looking at this kind of through a different lens, but we can all come together, and understand that options give us this unique ability to customize the risk return profile of our portfolios and our own, personal risk tolerances in a way that can't be found in just buying and selling stock.
Beautiful. And we've got to get in to start to learn. As you mentioned, some of these things are the things that we don't know, and we don't know what we don't know. So let's dive in, do it safely, do it with some people who can guide you through that journey. We don't want to know just enough to be dangerous. We want to get in, learn what we need to know, and move forward safely, protect our capital. Jim, pleasure. Thank you so much for being on. We're posting it in the comments for you guys. I know some of you guys are asking where you can find the show. And getting the spelling on your name. I know you guys are excited. You don't want to miss that. So Tasty Trade, you can check out Jim's show, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you jump on over. Jim, it's been a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much for being on today.
Awesome. Hey, Thanks so much, Blair. Yeah, I appreciate it.
If I say something really fast before we close up, guys?
Go ahead.
Of course.
Man. First of all, Dr. Jim, I just want to give you a personal thank you for your time today. It really means a lot. We know you're a busy guy. You have a huge following, and just have so much going on all the time. So really thank you for dedicating that. You've become kind of a bit of a personal hero here for us here in the Mitchell household in recent months, over the past year, really, as we've gotten to know you a little bit more. Obviously, you were a guest on our podcast. You joined us for our virtual summit back in April. And so your expertise is just like, it just means a lot to us. So thank you for that. With that being said, guys, listen, I just put something in the chat. Now, it's a lot. I put 3 different links in there, but I want you to grab them all because they're really important. The first link that I just put in there is a link for you guys to open up your Tastyworks account. So save that, click on it. It'll open up your internet browser, save it for later, open up your Tastyworks account and get in there and start learning how to use it, because even if you already have another brokerage platform that you use or an account that's open up a Tastyworks account too and get to know how to use it, because it comes with so many awesome components that Dr. Jim highlighted, some of which on the show that we want you guys to use. The second link that I want you guys to save is the link to the podcast episode where David Mitchell interviewed Dr. Jim. It's awesome. The stuff they talked about on that episode is just very enlightening in this context of becoming a trader and the journey that all of us are pursuing. So click on that link, save it in your internet browser so you can watch that later. And then the third link is a link directly to Dr. Jim's show, Theory to Practice. So you guys can watch recordings from his past episodes and, of course, catch it live at 2 p.m. Eastern, like you mentioned. Dr. Jim, just to verify your email that you were kind enough to share with all of us, it's Jay Schultz. How do you spell Schultz one more time? It's Schultz, right?
No. And
Okay.
so it's actually, yeah, that's a common mistake. There's a sneaky little C in there. So
Okay.
so it's J and then SCHULTZ at tastytrade.com.
Awesome. So I
So
apologize. For the typo.
SCHULTZ. And Ben, thank you, man, for everything you said. Your super kind words. Like, I'm so humbled by everything you just said. And that really, it's just, thank you, man. That really, really means a lot to me. It's my pleasure to be here with you guys today. I think what you guys are doing is pretty awesome.
Thank you so much. That obviously means so much to us as well. And listen, guys, we're going to send the recording of this very session to all of you guys later. So watch it as many times as you want, because the information that was covered, while fast paced by necessity, it is invaluable stuff. And so keep an eye out for the recording later. Blair, thanks for hosting us today. Thanks for leading the way. And thank you again to our TRADEway students out there for giving us your time today.
No problem, Ben.
Thanks, Blair.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. You can do it, everybody. Let's get on board. We'll get you moving forward. Thanks so much. See you guys.
So have a good one.
Bye, guys.